Welcome to the chemistry labs of LaGuardia Community College. As a scientist, working in a laboratory can be an exciting experience and journey. However, not adhering to the safety rules at all times can be extremely dangerous to you and your fellow classmates. That is why the Natural Sciences Department has prepared this short instructional video on the safety rules that must be followed at all times, with no exceptions, while working in the chemistry lab. Registered students are the only individuals allowed in the laboratory provided there is a lab instructor present. No children or animals may accompany students into the laboratory. Safety equipment can be found in different areas of the laboratory to aid students performing experiments. In the event of a health or safety emergency, it is imperative to know the location of these items, which include fume hoods to prevent the inhalation of toxic vapors. Reagent bottles should stay in the fume hood unless otherwise instructed by a lab instructor or lab technician to remove them from under the fume hood. In the case of a fire, notify your instructor and/or lab technician and leave the building. A fire extinguisher should only be used as a last resort. A right-to-know compliance center containing safety data sheets are intended to provide comprehensive information about a substance or mixture being used in the chemical laboratory. If a spill should occur, please notify your instructor or lab technician so that they can take the necessary procedures or protocols to clean up the spill in an efficient manner as demonstrated here. The lab technician here is using a neutralizer and absorbent to collect and transfer the spill waste into a yellow bag that is used to dispose of hazardous material. Students are not expected to clean up spills. An eye wash station is used to treat chemicals that may splash into your eyes. In the event of a chemical getting into your eyes, immediately apply water at the eye wash station for 15 minutes while keeping your eyes open. Likewise, when using the shower station, pull the lever and flush the affected area for 15 minutes. While under the shower, remove contaminated clothing if necessary. LaGuardia Community College has implemented a zero-tolerance policy, which states, students must be wearing goggles at all times while inside the laboratory. This includes before, during, and after an experiment. Even if you are finished with an experiment, your goggles must remain on. Students around you may still be working with chemicals. Absolutely no food or drinks may be consumed or visible in the lab, including water. Under no circumstances should cell phone chargers, makeup, chewing gum, and lip gloss be used in the laboratory. All of these items must be stored in bags or placed in designated areas. Long hair, including facial hair, must be pulled back and no excess clothing should be worn. Long sleeves should be either buttoned down or rolled up if they are hanging loose around the wrists. If you are wearing shorts or a skirt that does not cover your knees, you must wear a lab coat. In the lab, it is best to wear clothing made of cotton and not polyester. Students must wear goggles at all times while inside the lab. This includes before, during, and after an experiment. Absolutely no open-toe shoes should be worn. Before plugging in electrical equipment into an electrical outlet, check that there is no damage to the wires and/or plug. In addition, when working with a Bunsen burner, open flames should never be left unattended. Chemistry aisles should always be free of obstruction. This includes coats, backpacks, or other personal belongings. All of these personal items should be stored inside a cabinet below the lab benches. Students must never mix chemicals just to see what happens. They must always follow the protocols written in their lab manuals unless they are told otherwise by the lab instructor or lab technician. If you have any doubts concerning the procedure, don't be afraid to ask your lab instructor or lab technician. There is absolutely no sitting on the lab benches in the laboratory. In this case, the student will be asked to remove themselves. There is potential to be reprimanded or given penalties for repeat transgressions. In the event of breaking any glassware, notify your lab instructor or lab technician immediately. The lab instructor or lab technician will clean up the broken glass and dispose of it into the broken glass receptacle. The student is working on his experiment, making observations and writing those observations into his lab notebook. After looking around and contemplating his next course of action, he decides to dump the waste chemicals from his test tube into the drain. After conducting an experiment, students should never dispose of chemicals down the drain. Let's take another look at the proper way to dispose of waste chemicals. If you are ever unsure of what to do with any waste accumulated from an experiment, do not dump it into the sink. Get the attention of your professor, then ask what you should do with the waste. They will direct you to where the waste is supposed to be discarded. When disposing of waste, pay attention to the waste label, which has a list of chemicals to be disposed of in each bottle. There may be more than one waste bottle for the same experiment. If the waste bottle is more than 3/4 full, inform the instructor or lab technician. In general, when pouring chemicals from a bottle, assume a firm grip on the container and its handle if available. Each waste bottle must be closed after each student disposes of their waste, regardless if there are other students waiting or not. Wash your hands periodically throughout an experiment. When conducting an experiment, all students are expected to clean up. An experiment is not considered complete until all laboratory equipment is turned off, unplugged if necessary, and returned to its original location. In addition, glassware must be cleaned, dried, and also placed back into the designated drawer. Before completing an experiment, the lab instructor will come around and inspect the lab bench area. Then, they will inform the students that they have completed the lab. Students are able to remove their personal protective equipment and retrieve their personal belongings from the cabinets. After use, lab coats should be separated from you and your belongings and placed in a plastic bag. When performing an experiment in the chemistry laboratory, following safety rules are of vital importance. If there is a health or safety emergency, it is important to know where all the safety equipment are located in the lab, including the fire extinguisher, the first aid kit, the emergency contact phone, spill response material, broken glass receptacle, fire blanket, safety shower, and eye wash station. LaGuardia has a zero-tolerance policy, which states students must be wearing goggles at all times while inside the laboratory. Lab bench aisles should always be free of obstructions. All personal belongings must be stored inside a cabinet below the lab benches. Students should always come prepared They must always follow the protocols unless otherwise instructed. If there are any doubts concerning the procedure, please ask the lab instructor or the lab technician. Students should never sit on top of lab benches. Repeat offenses will be subject to consequences or penalties. In the event of broken glass, notify your lab instructor or lab technician and dispose of the glass properly. All waste accumulated must be properly disposed of. Never dump any waste down the drain. Pay attention to the labels on the waste bottles. If you are unsure, ask the lab instructor. All equipment should be unplugged, organized, put back into its proper location. Glassware must be dried and placed back in their original drawers. The final step is to exit the lab. If you have any health concerns, disabilities, or are pregnant, please speak to your instructor. Lastly, your area should be inspected by the lab instructor, and then you are able to exit the laboratory. This laboratory safety video was made to assist students in maintaining a safe working environment in the lab. We thank you for viewing, and remember to always be safe in the chemistry laboratory.